Hello and welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. Students, in this session, we cut karo ek minute. Cut. Oh, sorry. Okay. Hello and welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. I'm Pratik, faculty for Polity, International Relations and Internal Security. Students, in this session, we shall be focusing on the questions that came from polity and the governance section in the UPSC CSE Prelims 2024. Now, students, going through these questions will help you understand the pattern of the questions that came in the examination, which will help the aspirants, especially who are going to give the examination in the next year, understand the type of questions, the section, the area the questions came from, so that you can channelize your strategy as per the demand or as per the need of the examination. So students, I request you to please go through this video carefully, understand the pattern of the questions, and then you can change or align your strategy in or as per the demand of the examination. Alright, so let us start with the analysis of UPSC CSE Prelims 2024, the questions from polity and governance. Now, around 20 to 22 questions had come from the section polity and governance. So, first we'll go through the questions from polity, followed by the questions on governance. Once we go through all the questions, I'll tell you the expected accuracy you are expected, right? Which means if you are above that percentage, which means you can analyze your score, final score, or let's say the cutoff marks. So let's get started. The first question, the question number 3. Now we are referring to the C set, okay? So let me just inform you that we are referring to the C section, C set, right? And in C set, question number 3. What is question number 3? With reference to the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, consider the following statements. Speaker of the Lok Sabha, consider the following statements. The first statement, he or she shall not preside while any resolution for removal of the Speaker of the Lok Sabha is under consideration. The keyword is resolution of the removal of the Speaker is under consideration. Second is, he shall not have the right to speak while such resolution is under consideration. The third one is, he shall not be entitled to vote on the resolution in the first instance. 1, 2 and these are the 3 segments. Now students, when it comes to resolution for the removal of the speaker, we know that the speaker does not preside, right? He is part of the parliamentary proceeding, but he does not preside. So the statement 1 seems to be correct. Now focus on statement number 2. He shall not have the right to speak while such resolution is under consideration. This is incorrect. Why? Because when a resolution for his removal is pending in the Lok Sabha, he has the right to appear in the parliament, be a part of the parliamentary proceedings, and also has a right to speak. So this one is incorrect. And when the speaker is not presiding, which means he is just like another member of the Lok Sabha, which means he can vote in the first instance as well. Here it's written, not be entitled to vote. He is entitled to vote. Now, when he acts as a speaker in the first instance, he cannot vote. But when a resolution for his removal is pending, right, and in the first instance, he can vote. He cannot vote when he is the speaker. He can only vote while he is the speaker when the votes are equally distributed or equally divided, right? Which means even the statement number 3 is correct, which means it seems that only one, that is, which of the statements given above is are correct? 1 only. Option E is the correct answer, right? So again, speaker, the question was asked on speaker from the chapter parliament. Now, Parliament is again one of the most important chapters. So, if you go through the questions of this year, many questions were asked from the chapter Parliament, right? So, as I told you that few chapters, or if you go to the syllabus of Indian polity, there are few chapters that you need to focus, which means you need to know in and out about the chapters. For example, we have the chapters on fundamental rights, center-state relations, preamble, parliament, governor, president. So these are some of the important chapters, and the content in these chapters you need to know in and out. The next is question number 4 from the C set. With reference to the Indian Parliament, consider the following statements. A bill pending in the Lok Sabha lapses on its dissolution. Now the question is about when the Lok Sabha dissolves, right? What would be the status of the bills? So a bill which is pending in the Lok Sabha lapses. Yes, absolutely correct. So a bill passed by the Lok Sabha and pending in the Rajya Sabha lapses on the dissolution. Yes. Passed by the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha has not approved it, which means maybe the Rajya Sabha is not in concurrence with the opinion of the Lok Sabha, right? So here in this case the bill lapses. Third, a bill in regard to which the President of India has notified his or her intention to summon the houses to a joint sitting lapses. See, when the bill is passed by both the houses, and let's say the President of India has notified his intention, right? Why? Because the bill is not being, or the bill has not been passed in both the houses, right? That's the reason the President has notified his intention to summon the house. Now, in this case, the bill does not lapse. Here it's mentioned it lapses. This is incorrect. For example, let's say the bill has been passed by both the houses of Parliament. Now the bill has gone before the President. Now in this case also the bill does not lapse, right? So here you need to understand in which instances the bill lapses and which are the other instances where the bill does not lapse. So lapses and does not lapse is something that you need to know clear cut, right? So here the statement number 3 is incorrect, which means 1 and 2, option B is the correct answer, right? Now, question number 5 from C set. With reference to the Parliament of India, consider the following statements. Prorogation of a house by the President of India does not require the advice of Council of Ministers. Students, here you need to know the difference between adjournment and prorogation. There are high chances that you might get confused between prorogation and adjournment. Now in adjournment we have one adjournment and the other one is the adjournment sine die, right? So when it comes to adjournment, it is the presiding officer who adjourns the house, and when it comes to prorogation, it is done by the President. So yeah, the prorogation of a house by the President does not require the advice. This is incorrect. It requires the advice of the Council of Ministers, right? So second statement, prorogation of a house is generally done after the house is adjourned sine die. So what is adjourned sine die? When the presiding officer terminates the sitting, right? When the presiding officer terminates the sitting without mentioning the date when the house would reassemble. This is known as adjournment sine die, right? So is done after the house is adjourned sine die, and who does it? Presiding officer. But there is no bar to the President proroguing the house while it is in session, which means the President can also prorogue. See, the difference between adjournment and prorogation is, when it comes to adjournment, it is terminate the sitting, but when it comes to prorogation, the session gets terminated, right? And there is no bar to the President proroguing the house while it is in session. Yes, this is correct. The third one, dissolution of the Lok Sabha is done by the President, yes, of India, who, save in exceptional circumstances, does so on the advice of Council of Ministers. Usually the President dissolves Lok Sabha on the advice of Council of Ministers. Only in the rare instances or circumstances, the President can use his discretionary power, right? So this statement is correct. Here option C, it seems to be the correct answer for question number 5. Now, question number 13, a writ of prohibition, which means you need to be very sure shot about Article 32. And the different types of writs. Now, which are the different types of writs? We have habeas corpus, then we have prohibition, mandamus, certiorari, quo warranto. These are the 5 types of writs. Now, the question is about the writ of prohibition. Now, usually students get confused between the writ of mandamus, prohibition and certiorari. When it comes to mandamus, right, in mandamus the court is issuing an order to the public official to do his duty. So, this should be very clear. Mandamus, the court ordering a public official. When it comes to prohibition and certiorari, the higher court is ordering the lower court. Now, in prohibition, the higher court orders the lower court to quash the proceeding before the lower court, right? So, here you see that C option, the lower court prohibiting continuation of proceedings in a case. The higher court might feel that the lower court is usurping the jurisdiction. In such case, the writ of prohibition is issued by the higher court. Now, higher court can be the Supreme Court or higher court or High Court, right? So, Supreme Court can order it to High Court or High Court can order it to District Court. So, option C is the correct answer. So, students, the point is if we go through all the questions that we have discussed so far, be it speaker or be it the dissolution of Lok Sabha or be it the prorogation or be it the writ of prohibition, if you are thorough with Lakshmikant book, there is no reason why you should go wrong with these questions. The questions are not confusing at all, which means the 4 questions that we have discussed so far, you should be very thorough, or if you are thorough with the book, you have a high chance or you should be in a position to attempt all the questions correct. There is no chance why you should go wrong with these 4 questions that we have discussed so far. And that explains the importance of the standard book. The next is consider the following statements. The first statement is, it is the governor of the state who recognizes and declares any community of that state as a scheduled tribe. Students, when it comes to recognizing any community as scheduled tribe, the governor is consulted. But it is the president who has the right to declare any community to be a scheduled caste or scheduled tribe. So, it is president who has the right to notify any community as scheduled caste or scheduled tribe. So, here the governor it should be present. So, first statement is incorrect. The second, a community declared as a scheduled tribe in a state need not be so in other state, which means the list of scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes can vary from state to state. It's not that if one caste has been notified under scheduled tribe, the same caste should get the benefit in other state. Now, if the other state has also notified that caste, yes, this person would get the benefit in other state. Just because a person is getting benefit under the ST status or ST category doesn't mean he also gets the benefit in other state, right? So, here this one is correct. Need not to be in another state, that is option B has to be the correct answer for question number 14. So, again a very simpler question. So, again if you refer to this chapter, special provision for certain classes, this is chapter in Lakshmikant, right? If you go through this chapter, you will find the sentence in the first page of the chapter itself. The next question is with reference to Union Budget, Article 112. Consider the following statements. The Union Finance Minister on behalf of the Prime Minister lays the annual financial statement before both the Houses of Parliament. Now, you must have, especially during the mock test or during your revision, you must have come across n number of times when it comes to laying the annual financial statement. Now, we know that the term budget is not mentioned in the Constitution. So, the term that is mentioned in the Constitution is the annual financial statement. So, we must have gone through n number of times that it is the President who lays the annual financial statement, which means the president lays the statement of estimated receipt and estimated expenditure before both the houses of parliament. First statement is incorrect. So if you are going wrong with this question, which means you have committed a blunder, right? The next, this is Article 112. The statement number 2, at the union level, no demand for a grant can be made except on the recommendation of the President of India. So whenever or any ministry requires grant for the expenditure purpose, they have to demand the grant, and this can be done only with the recommendation of the President. This is mentioned in Article 113. So again, a very simple question, right? So here statement 1 is incorrect, statement number 2 is correct, right? Next question. How many delimitation commissions have been constituted by the government of India till December 2023? Now you might wonder, why has this question been asked? Though it might be difficult for you to remember the number of delimitation commissions that might have been formed so far, but the reason why they have asked you the question is because of this term which was in the news. Why? With respect to the UT of Jammu and Kashmir. The central government had established delimitation commission for the UT of Jammu and Kashmir. That's the reason this was in the news. Now, when delimitation commission was in the news, you are expected to know what exactly is delimitation commission and the delimitation commission or the appointment of delimitation commission at the central level. Now, what is delimitation commission? It is nothing but it is a process to mark the boundaries of the territorial constituencies in our country. Simple. Now, so far there were 4 delimitation commissions. One was, I guess, in the year 1952. The second one, I guess it was in the year 1963. The third one, 1973. And the fourth one was in the year 2002. The fifth one might happen after 2026 census. So, option D is the correct answer. The Constitution's 71st Amendment Act 1992 amends the 8th schedule to the Constitution to include which of the following languages? See, students, the question that we had been through so far were easy questions, right? As I told you, there's no reason for you to go wrong with the questions that we have discussed so far, except the last question about the delimitation commission, right? Now, this question might be a bit tricky, or I could consider this question to be of moderate level. Why? Because it is difficult to remember the languages that were incorporated in the 8th schedule under various amendments. Now, when it comes to the 71st Amendment Act 1992, Konkani, Manipuri and Nepali, these were the 3 languages that were incorporated in the 8th schedule. Maithili, Bodo, Santhali and I guess Dongri, these were the languages that were incorporated into the 8th schedule by the 92nd CAA 2003. Right, so the answer has to be 1, 2, 3, that is option A is the correct answer. Now, you might go wrong with this question, that's fine, because at times it becomes difficult to remember the languages. So, but again, the point is, even this point is mentioned in the Lakshmikant. In the chapter official languages, you will find the answer to this particular question. So, all the questions that we have gone or we have been through so far, you will find the answers to all these questions in Lakshmikant. That's the importance of the book. The next question, which of the following statements are correct about the Constitution of India? Powers of the municipalities are given in part 9, municipalities part 9. Then emergency provisions part 18. Then amendment of the Constitution part 20. Now, students, there are few parts that is expected or the aspirants are expected to know For example, so it's very easy to by heart the initial few parts. For example, we have part 1, Union and its territories, article 1 to 4. Then we have part 2, citizenship, article 5 to 11. Then we have part 3, fundamental rights, article 12 to article 35. Then we have part 4, DPSP, article 36 to 51. Then we have part 4A, fundamental duties, right? And then we have the union government, the state government. And when we have been through these chapters, local government, we know that when it comes to Panchayati Raj, it is part 9. When it comes to municipalities, it is part 9A. So Panchayati 9, 11th schedule. Municipalities 9A, 12th schedule. This one is correct. Emergency provisions being one of the most important chapters in the book. That's the reason you are expected to know the part. So even this one is correct. And amendment of the constitution, again a very, very important part. Article 368, part 20 is the correct. So option D is the correct answer for question number 24. Next one, which of the following statements is correct as per the Constitution of India? So here there are subjects and so you have to identify which subject is under which list. So we have state list, union list and concurrent list, residuary list. Now this is a very common sense based question. When it comes to interstate trade and commerce, there's no question of this subject being under the state list. Why? It deals with multiple states. So there's no question of interstate trade and commerce being a part of the state subject. Right? Here you need to identify correct. So this one is incorrect. Interstate migration also, again, it involves more than one state. So there's no question of this subject being under the state list. Interstate quarantine, again, it involves state. Is a union subject under the union list? Okay, this can, there's a high chance that this subject might be under union list. Corporation tax is a state subject under the state list. Again, corporation tax is something that falls under the union list. So which of the following statements is correct? Option C. Right? So option C and option D, you might get confused with option D as well, but the most appropriate answer seems to be option C. So this is where you need to use your common sense to identify the correct answer. It's not possible to remember all the 97 subjects in the union list, right? Around 66 subjects in the state list, around 47 subjects in the concurrent list, but you need to use common sense, right? So far the question that we have dealt with were relatively much more easier, right? Barring few questions which required some factual knowledge or factual information. Under which of the following articles of the Constitution of India the Supreme Court of India plays a right to privacy? Now, if you go wrong with this question, it's not even a blunder. It's something that you need to introspect if you're going wrong with this question. Right? One of the most easiest question, right? I think a student who is going to the school can also answer this particular question. So one of the most easiest question. So there's no way you can go wrong with this question. Absolutely no. No excuses whatsoever. So, case Puttaswamy case 2017, right? So, option D seems to be the correct answer with respect to question number 26. Which of the following statements about the ethics committee in the Lok Sabha are correct? Now students, when it comes to this question, though you might ask me, so this topic is mentioned in the parliamentary committees, but the options that are given under the ethics committee was not mentioned in the Lakshmikant book. You are correct, you are true that the statements were not mentioned in Lakshmikant. But students, given that this committee was in the news, why? Pause the video and ask yourself, why was this committee in the news? Because of the cash for query case in the Supreme Court, which was before the ethics committee. Especially the case was relating to one of the Lok Sabha MPs from Trinamool Congress. I hope you might wonder or guess which MP I am referring about. That's the reason ethics committee was in the news. For almost 1-2 months, this committee was in the news. And there were many articles in the newspaper, Hindu, Indian Express, which dealt about this ethics committee, and that's the reason you are expected to know about this ethics committee. Let me just show you. See this. If you open this article in the Indian Express, Lok Sabha's ethics committee, its history, constitution, and members, you'll find the answer to this question in this article, which means that you cannot ignore the newspapers. Right? Just referring to the standard books is not going to suffice, which means you need to also open your eyes and find out the important articles in the newspaper. So let us go through this question. Initially, it was an ad hoc committee. Yes, it was an ad hoc committee which got established in the year 2000, and it was made a permanent committee only in the year 2015. Permanent committee in 15. Only a member of the Lok Sabha can make a complaint relating to the unethical conduct of a member of the Lok Sabha. No, not required. Any member can make a complaint against the Lok Sabha MP through another MP. But that person has to provide evidence, the alleged misconduct, which means you need to submit proof. And you also need to sign an affidavit stating that your complaint is not frivolous, not fake. So, this one is incorrect. Why? Because any member can complain. This committee cannot take up any matter which is sub judice, or it cannot take up any matter based on the media reports, right? So, it cannot take up any matter which is sub judice, that is before the courts. This is correct. So, option statement 1 is correct, statement number 3 is correct, option C. This is the correct answer is option C for question number 13. Now, this I can consider this to be a moderate or difficult question. So, you might go wrong with this question, and that's fine, right? Given the nature of questions that came in the polity and governance part, even if you are going wrong with this question, no need to feel hard, right? But again, the point to emphasize is to make sure that you are going through the newspaper articles. Next question, who was the provincial president of the Constituent Assembly before Dr. Rajendra Prasad took over? Now, Rajendra Prasad got elected as the president. So, as Dr. Sachidananda Sinha, he was the senior most member in the Constituent Assembly. That's the reason he was made the provincial president. But once the elections were held, Dr. Rajendra Prasad took over the president of the Constituent Assembly. Now, this Constituent Assembly had one president plus two vice presidents. And who are the two vice presidents? One is Mukherjee, H.C. Mukherjee. The other one is Krishnamachari. So, these were the two vice presidents, which means you should know that the Constituent Assembly had one president and two vice presidents. The next question, friends. With reference to the Government of India Act 1935, consider the following statements. Again, so the previous question, you can find this question in Making of the Constitution chapter, right? So, the first section of Lakshmikant. The next question with reference to the Government of India Act 1935, consider the following statements. It provided for the establishment of all India Federation based on the Indian provinces and the princely states. The first point under Government of India Act 1935. Defense and foreign affairs were kept under the control of the... Now see, defense and foreign affairs were again a part of the Government of India Act 1935, but this act divided the federal list into two categories. One is the reserved category and the other one is transferred category. Now, reserved category, the subjects under the reserved category were kept directly under the Governor General. And this Governor General was helped or was assisted by 3 councillors. And subjects like defense and foreign affairs were a part of reserved list. When it comes to transferred list, the subjects under the transferred list was again a part of or was under the Governor General. But this Governor General was assisted by the Council of Ministers, and this Council of Ministers required the confidence of the federal legislature, which means defense and foreign affairs were not under the control of transferred list, but it was a part of the reserved list. So the statement 2 is incorrect, statement 1 is correct. Again, the chapter historical background. This is a chapter that this question will find it in the historical background chapter. Next, part 20, as per article 368 of the Constitution of India, the Parliament may amend any provision of the Constitution by way of addition, which means the Parliament can add new provision, can change the provisions of the Constitution, or can also repeal any part of the Constitution. For example, right to property was repealed as a fundamental right. Right? So, again, a very simple question, which means the Parliament can add, repeal, as well as change any of the provisions of the Constitution of India. So, the correct answer is option D. Very simple question. Now, which of the following statements are correct in respect of money bill in the Parliament? So, again, this one is an easy question, but barring one statement, that is statement number 1. Because if you are thorough with the book Lakshmikant, you know that in Lakshmikant, when it comes to money bills and financial bills, only article 110 and 117 is mentioned in the book. But when it comes to article 110, see what's mentioned over here. Article 109 mentions special procedure in respect of money bills. But if you read article 110, what it says, article 110 of the Indian Constitution defines what is money bill. So article 110 is defining what is money bill. But the special procedure in order to pass a money bill is mentioned in article 109, which means this statement is correct. Now you can go wrong with this statement. There's a high chance that you might go wrong with this statement. But if you refer the last page of Indian Parliament, then there's a list of articles mentioned on the last page of Indian Parliament. In that page, it's given article 109, special procedure, 110 defines money bill. Right? So you need to be careful when it comes to dealing with such questions. Now, the other three questions are, these statements are relatively very easy, right? A money bill shall not be introduced in the Council of States. Yes, it can only be introduced in the Lok Sabha. Then the Rajya Sabha can either approve the bill or suggest changes but cannot reject it. Yes, 14 days time period is given to the Rajya Sabha. Amendments to a money bill suggested by the Rajya Sabha have to be accepted. No way. So if the Rajya Sabha is not willing to accept the changes as suggested by the Rajya Sabha, the bill is deemed to have been passed as per the first literature of the money bill, right? So this one is incorrect. Not necessary for Lok Sabha to accept it. So 1, 2, 3. So option C seems to be the correct answer. The next question. The Northeastern Council was established by the Northeastern Council Act 1971. Subsequent to the amendment of NEC Act in 2002, the council comprises which of the following members? Now, again, students, the composition of Northeast Council is not mentioned in the book. The composition for the other zonal councils is mentioned, but the composition for the Northeastern Council is not mentioned. You might ask, how can the UPSC ask such a difficult question? No. The UPSC also expects you to be informed about the recent events, recent ongoing events. Now, students, I'm not sure if it's the month of December or Jan. Our Home Minister was actually chairing the Northeastern Council Summit or meeting in the month of December or Jan. Now, in that article, the composition of Northeastern Council was mentioned. or keeping in mind the violence in the northeastern region, especially the state of Manipur, you are expected to know about the northeastern region and the governance mechanism for the development of the northeastern region. So here the Northeastern Council comprises of, yes, the governor, yes, the chief minister, yes, 3 members to be nominated by the president, yes, and the home minister, who is the ex officio chairman of the Northeastern Council. Option D is the correct answer for question number 40. Consider the following pairs, party and its leaders. The first one is Bharatiya Janasangh. Now it's always in the news, so it's very simple to say that Bharatiya Janasangh was founded by none other than Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. Socialist Party. Now see Raja Gopalachari. He was the last Governor General. He was also referred to as Rajaji. Now he was the one who founded the Swatantra Party in 1959. 1959. This one is incorrect. Then we have Jagjeevan Ram. Again, it's a factual one, so you are expected to know, because these are again prominent names, right? So you are expected to know. So this one is correct. Again, Acharya Narendra Dev was the one who founded the Socialist Party, Congress Socialist Party. So this one is also incorrect. So 1, 2. How many of the above are correctly matched? 1 and 2. So only 2. Option B has to be the correct answer for question number 23. It's a factual one, so you are supposed or expected to know this particular question. So students, we are done with the questions from Indian polity. I guess we have so far discussed around 17 to 18 questions. Now let us focus on the questions from governance. The first question is with reference to Digital India Land Records Modernization Program, consider the following statements. Now students, when it comes to governance, the questions that come from governance are current affairs based, right? So you do not have a standard book as such for governance. We do have, but usually or most often the questions from the governance part has been asked from the current affairs section. Now for current affairs section, there are multiple sources that people refer. Few people refer to only the newspapers. They do not refer anything apart from the newspapers. Few people refer to the magazines. You can just refer to the magazine that we publish, right? Or people also refer to some government sources like PIB, or the data. They collect the data from the different ministries. It doesn't matter which source you are following. What matters is how consistent you are with that particular source. If you are referring to the newspapers, how consistent you are. If you are referring only to the magazine part, how consistent you are. What matters is consistency. So if you are consistent with any of the one sources that I just mentioned, there's a high chance that you should have attempted this question or all the questions of governance correctly. But again, 1 to 2 questions can be wrong as well. Not to worry. Why? Because your accuracy shouldn't be 100%, not required for your accuracy to be more than 100%. Even if your accuracy is around 50%, you should feel safe. So let's refer to the first statement. To implement the scheme, the central government provides 100% funding. Second, under the scheme, the cadastral maps are digitized. The third, an initiative has been undertaken to transliterate the records of rights from local language to any of the languages recognized by the Constitution of India. So again, all the 3 statements are correct, but let me show you a authenticated source, and this is PIB. So if you refer over here, it's PIB. All the 3 statements. The first statement was, so here you see that the scheme will be effect from the 1st April 2016 with 100% funding by the center. The second, 68% cadastral maps have been digitized. The third statement, 17 states UTs have now using transliteration tool of land records in all the languages of Schedule 8, that is Schedule 8 of the Indian Constitution, 22 languages. Which means, as I told you, now this particular thing must have also been covered in the magazine or let's say in the newspaper. As I told you, if you refer to any one of the sources, be it the government sources, PIB, the magazine, I think you should have been in a position to attempt this particular question, right? So, option D is the correct answer for question number 8 from CSET. The next question, question number 9, with reference to Pradhan Mantri Surakshit Matritva Abhiyan, consider the following statements. Again, one of the questions that have been asked in the governance were related to the schemes of the government. So when it comes to schemes, you know that it's very important to know the provisions of the schemes, especially the provisions of the important schemes in detail. Again, this is one of the important schemes relating to health and family welfare, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So the scheme guarantees a minimum package of antenatal care services to women in their second and third trimesters of pregnancy and 6 months post-delivery healthcare service in any government health facility. Now students, the scheme does not explicitly mention the 6 months post-delivery healthcare. So here if you see, this is the information that I found on the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So here it's mentioned clearly that guarantees a minimum package of antenatal care services to women in their second and third trimesters. And the second statement, private sector care providers of certain specialties can volunteer to provide services at nearby government health facilities. Again, if you use common sense, why would the government stop the private healthcare providers from giving their specialization? So even this statement seems to be correct. So here you see, systematic approach for engagement private sector, which includes motivating private practitioners to volunteer for the campaign developing strategies. So statement second is correct. The next question, with reference to the Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Mandhan Yojana, consider the following statements. The entry age group for enrollment in the scheme is 21 to 40. Age specific contribution shall be made by the beneficiary. Each subscriber under the scheme shall receive a minimum pension of 3,000 per month after attaining the age of 60, family pension. So again, this I have picked from PIB again. So the entry age is 18 to 40. Now, statement 1 is incorrect. Now, when statement 1 is incorrect, so option A and D gets eliminated. So here you need to refer to the statement number. Now option B again is correct. Now let's refer to statement number 3. No need to read the statement number 4 if you know the age group. Each subscriber under the scheme shall receive a minimum pension of 3,000. Yes, this one is correct. Again here, if you see, minimum assured pension of 3,000 per month after attaining the age of 60 years, PIB. Which means even the third statement is correct. Option 2 and 3, B is the correct answer for question number 10. That's the importance of referring to the current affairs sources or relying on the government sources. The next, consider the following statements regarding Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam. These are the 3 statements. Provisions will come into effect from the 18th Lok Sabha. This will be in force for 15 years after becoming an act. There are provisions for the reservation of seats for the scheduled caste women within the quota reserved for scheduled caste. Now this was, again, this made headlines, right? Why? Because reservations were provided for women in the Lok Sabha and the state legislative assembly. But only the statement 1 seems to be a bit confusing. If you read the act, statement number 2 and 3, to identify whether statement 2 and 3 are correct or incorrect, it's very simple. But statement 1 is a bit confusing. The wordings are a bit confusing. Now I'll show you the wording exactly what's mentioned in the act. Again, I'm referring to PIB. What is mentioned? Please note this line. The reservation is said to be enforced following the publication of a new census and the completion of the delimitation exercise, right? And with respect to second and third statements, it will shall cease to exist 15 years after the commencement, right? And the seats are also reserved for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. So statement number 2 and 3 is correct. Statement number 1, this is 18th Lok Sabha. Now you might assume that as this is the 18th Lok Sabha and the census, we all know that the census will be undertaken in the month of or in the year of 2026, and post that delimitation exercises will be held. So we might assume that these things might take place in the 18th Lok Sabha. But the question is, what's the guarantee that the government might survive until 2026? What if the TDP and Nitish Kumar political party, Janata Dal, what if they withdraw support from NDA? The government would crumble, fall. Maybe the India alliance can form the government. In such case, it would be 19th Lok Sabha or can also be 20th Lok Sabha, you never know. That's the reason. By mentioning this 18th Lok Sabha, they just confused the statement, right? Had they mentioned the provision will come into effect from the census or the delimitation exercises, yes, the statement would have been correct. And thus, as I have mentioned 18th Lok Sabha, this statement is incorrect, which means statement number 2 and 3, that is option C, seems to be the correct answer. And that's it, students. I guess we have so far discussed 22 questions. 18 questions from Indian polity and 4 questions from governance. So going through these questions, how do you perceive these questions, 22 questions that came from polity and governance? Students, the questions that came from polity and governance were easy. It's not the questions were tough, right? Barring few questions which were factual and which require you to be informed with the current updates. So if you are able to, or a good candidate, if he is thorough with the book and if he has read the current affairs thoroughly, he has a high chance, he or she has a high chance to score more than 75% in polity and governance. Right. So if your accuracy is somewhere between 50%, which means that you have not been thorough with your standard book and the current affairs sources. What does this questions tell you, especially for the aspirants who are going to appear in the year or the next year? Students, there is no substitute to the standard book. You have to be thorough with the standard book. Just because the questions were asked on Parliament this year, many questions were asked from the Parliament this year, doesn't mean that you have to focus only on Parliament the next year. Questions can be asked from any chapter. The point is, when it comes to Lakshmikant, you have to be very, very thorough with the book, especially the important chapters from the book. Your revision, your understanding of these subjects or the chapters should be so accurate that you shouldn't go wrong with any one question. And that's the reason, students, relying on the standard books, relying on the standard sources becomes extremely, extremely important, right? So again, for the aspirants who will be writing the examination next year, right, make sure that you're very, very thorough with your standard book. When it comes to current affairs sources, especially the questions from governance, the questions would be based, as I told you, the questions would come from the current affairs sources. So make sure that whichever source you refer for current affairs, you should be consistent with that particular source. I hope, students, this analysis of polity and governance would help you to channelize your strategy as per the demand of the examination. Right, students? So that's it from the session or the analysis of polity and governance from UPSC CSE Prelims 2024. Thank you so much, students.